Every single year of fantasy football, you need to realize the earlier the better is the waiver wire strategy that you need to be taking, because that's how you're going to find your league-winning guys like Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams and other guys like Jayden Reed and even Justin Herbert a couple years ago. And before week 1 fantasy football is when we can identify these guys before they actually break out on the field. So we're going through 18 total guys that you can add on your waiver wire today for free before week 1 fantasy football. And I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for week 1, so please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So the first group of guys that I'm going to go through today are going to fit the category of most available by roster percentage that are absolute must-adds. These guys should not be on waiver wires at this moment in time, but they are. So this group of wide receivers here starts out with Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Jalen Polk, and Romeo Dobbs. Listen, all 4 of these guys have legitimate chances to be their team's wide receiver 1, and none of them are above 45% rostered. To start out with Joshua Palmer here, 31.9% rostered on ESPN right now. Now with Joshua Palmer, this is not a player I have particularly loved throughout his entire career. I don't think he's been that great of a player, but the reality that we have to look at with the Los Angeles Chargers here is currently right now, we're basically relying on a rookie wide receiver coming out of Georgia, Ladd McConkey, to be their wide receiver 1. Well, the problem with Ladd McConkey, as you can see on the screen, he was never an extremely dominant wide receiver for the Georgia Bulldogs in his 3-year career. Now, I personally believe that he will be their wide receiver 1, but that does not change the fact that not only Joshua Palmer is he a starter right now, but he has the most experience in the NFL out of this group right here between him, Quentin Johnston, and Ladd McConkey. So we're in a situation right now where Joshua Palmer should not be on waiver wires because all of those guys are attached to Justin Herbert. Now, I want to make it clear, the Chargers will be run first. This is a Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman offense. It's going to be run-centric here. But that does not mean that Justin Herbert will not be extremely efficient with all these guys. That's exactly what we can expect. So Joshua Palmer is probably my favorite of the bunch. Now with Khalil Shakir, 44.7% roster on ESPN, so just a little more roster than Joshua Palmer, but still a guy that should not be on waivers right now. Look, it's a very similar situation to the Los Angeles Chargers, which is that the Buffalo Bills now have no clear wide receiver 1 with Stephon Diggs gone. And the guy that people are relying on again is Keon Coleman, a rookie out of Florida State who was better statistically than Ladd McConkey. But if you watched Keon Coleman during the preseason, this was not a dominant guy. He is not exactly who I viewed to be pro-ready coming out of college, and he kind of proved that during the preseason games. He really wasn't that great in preseason action. So there's definitely going to be an emphasis to get him the ball more, but there's going to be a slow build to Keon Coleman really breaking out as his team's number 1. Khalil Shakir is probably in the best position. Khalil Shakir is going to play a lot out of the slot, and that is going to open up a lot of things for guys like Keon Coleman to probably go deep. So Khalil Shakir, I just want a wide receiver that's attached to Josh Allen's arm, and Khalil Shakir right now definitely should not be on waiver wires and has a path to being the wide receiver 1 on this roster. Now with Jalen Polk here, he's 24.6% rostered. He is a rookie out of the University of Washington, very overshadowed by Rome Odunze. But with Jalen Polk here, again, we're looking at a possible wide receiver 1. Now, Demario Douglas is a guy we will cover here at the end of this video, but Jalen Polk right now, by all accounts, all reports in that building are that he's kind of looking like the wide receiver 1. He obviously looked really good during the preseason, and I don't think that this offense has much upside. This is why I prefer Khalil Shakir and Joshua Palmer over Jalen Polk. But if neither of those guys are available, Jalen Polk is going to be a good option because he is going to be, in all likelihood, a wide receiver 1. So it would not surprise me at all if he comes out and has 15-point game in week 1 versus the Cincinnati Bengals, because Jalen Polk is going to be a guy who receives at least 7 targets right out of the gate for the New England Patriots. So don't love this offense, but I do love getting a wide receiver 1 on waiver wires. Now, Romeo Dobbs is the last guy that I think is going to be a must-add today, because Romeo Dobbs is 35.8% rostered, so he's widely available. And with this Green Bay offense here, I don't bank on him necessarily being the number 1 wide receiver, but the reality is that there's no true alpha in this wide receiver room. It's led by a group of guys that have been inconsistent and not amazing. Like Jayden Reed is my probable wide receiver 1. I have him pretty set in stone as a wide receiver 1 because he does everything. Christian Watson is off and on. When he's on the field, it's a lot of times inconsistent. So like Romeo Doubs has kind of been the consistent guy for Jordan Love when you just look back to last season. Now, Romeo Doubs is going to have inconsistent fantasy weeks because he is very touchdown dependent, but just the fact that he's on a great offense with Jordan Love and is a starting wide receiver, he's going to be on the field probably 80 to 85% of the time, and again, should just not be on waiver wires right now. Now, the running backs here, I've got Rico Dowdle, Julio McKinnon, and Jaylen Wright. So with Rico Dowdle, Dallas Cowboys running back, 32.9% rostered right here. And this is going to be a guy that I would not be surprised if he gets actually more available since the Dallas Cowboys added Dalvin Cook to the mix. Now, what I want to say to people who are worried about Dalvin Cook and even have added Dalvin Cook instead of Rico Dowdle, look at what he did last year with the New York Jets. He was absolutely atrocious. And they decided to cut him. He ended up being with the Baltimore Ravens and didn't play basically any more snaps during 2023 when he got cut. So this is not a guy who's in his prime anymore. Let's get that out of the way 100%. Now, of course, he's with a better team at this point than the Jets were last year. So there's obviously arguments, well, this is not exactly a backfield that is headlined by a superstar Breece Hall and has really a lot of openings here. With Dalvin Cook, he doesn't have as much juice as Rico Dowdle does at this point. So when I look at Rico Dowdle, this is not a player I've ever particularly loved, but last year he averaged over 4 yards per carry. And in my opinion, this is more of just a belief for me. I believe he ends up being the running back one in this offense. In fact, I think he's going to probably dominate at the goal line for the Dallas Cowboys. I think Zeke is probably going to get a lot of pass catching opportunities, and I think he will have between the 20s carries. I think Rico Dowdle probably dominates at the goal line and handles a lot of between the 20s carries as well. So Rico Dowdle to me should not be on the waiver wire. Now with Julio McKinnon here in this Denver Broncos running back room, it is a total mystery still. I think we can expect Javonte Williams to be the starter, but that does not mean that Julio McKinnon is going to be just a handcuffed running back. Julio McKinnon is going to get opportunities specifically through targets this season. So with Samaje Perine last year, he handled almost 60 targets last year for the Denver Broncos in that running back position. Now, Javonte Williams also had a good amount of targets as well. 60 targets are being opened up, though, because Samaje Perine was cut earlier in the week by the Denver Broncos. He's with Kansas City now, which means that there's tons of running back targets opened up. So, again, I think that Javonte ends up being the running back one, but this has not exactly been a clear-cut decision all offseason. So what if Javonte Williams comes out and flops the first couple weeks? Well, Julio McKinnon was a Sean Payton guy, and Javonte was there before Sean Payton was there. And Sean Payton has obviously not shown any reservations about getting rid of guys that he doesn't like. So with Javonte Williams, he's on shaky ground. I believe he's going to be the starter, but Julio McKinnon, for that reason alone, should not be on waiver wires because, again, this team will be run first. And then with Jaylen Wright here, this is a guy that you need to understand is not going to have immediate upside. He will likely have zero upside in the first week or two. This is a guy who is 100% dependent on injury, and he is also in a backfield that is so absolutely run first with this Miami Dolphins offense. Mike McDaniel is a great run schemer and runs the zone running back system to absolute perfection. So with Jaylen Wright here, you are going to be relying on injury. The good news for him and the bad news for us who love Achane and Mostert is they're not exactly healthy guys. Mostert, over his career, has been injured a lot, and he's in his 30s now. Last season was like the only season he played basically an entire year. And with Devon Achane, obviously he missed a bunch of games last year. So Jaylen Wright, I can guarantee you, will have upside at some point because they are a two running back system. So when he steps up and is the running back two, this is an explosive guy that looked excellent during the preseason action, and you can absolutely count on him having upside at some point or another during your fantasy season. So it's best to get him now if you can stash him and afford to stash him. This is not an immediate contributor, but it is a guy who I believe if you have enough roster space, you can stash him. And it's particularly a guy I love taking on best ball drafts right now because best ball, you do not have to make start-sit decisions. You draft your team and automatically Underdog logs your best score by position in each particular week in fantasy. So if you do want to hop into one of these best ball drafts on Underdog, you're running out of time because these drafts are filling up like crazy right now, and they are super high upside for you to win over $1 million in the Best Ball Mania tournament specifically. So if you want to join Underdog, use that link in the comments below, and when you use code FN to sign up and deposit at least $10, they will match your deposit by 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So if you want to hop in one of these drafts right now, just make sure you do use code FN to do it. Now the tight ends available here, this is going to be Tyler Conklin and Tamm Hill. If you're having tight end troubles right now and you decided to go tight end late and you're uncomfortable, Tyler Conklin is going to be a guy who is going to be absolutely trusted by Aaron Rodgers, and he's only 34.1% rostered. I'm not going to say that he's going to come out and be like a top 10, top 5 tight end, but definitely top 12 is in his upside play right here because he is with Aaron Rodgers, who's older, and is probably going to be looking to throw the ball towards the middle of the field, towards guys that he can actually count on, and outside of Garrett Wilson, it's a bunch of question marks. Now with Tamm Hill here, if he is a tight end in your league, which he is in ESPN formats, this is a guy that you need to get. Tamm Hill is the ultimate jack of all trades in fantasy football because he technically plays quarterback a lot. He also plays running back. He plays wide receiver. He plays tight end. He plays fullback. He does everything for the Saints. This is a guy who will have upside right away. Dennis Allen loves this guy, the head coach over there, and he is going to be handling carries for the Saints offense. So do not count Tamm Hill out. And in fact, him being 38.9% rostered shows me a lot of people just don't know this guy has legitimate upside on a yearly basis for the New Orleans Saints. Now, this next group of guys right here I'm going through is some guys that you need to check availability on because these guys are over 50% roster, but not by much, and they should not be on waiver wires either. Tai Chandler, Chuba Hubbard, and Jared Goff should not be on anybody's waiver wire. Tai Chandler is 50.6% rostered at the moment on ESPN, and he is a guy that absolutely is going to get opportunities in this Minnesota backfield. Because while Aaron Jones will probably technically be the starter on the depth chart for the majority of the year, Tai Chandler is a guy that is viewed as a 1B to the 1A Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones is all more than likely going to see a lot of reception work for this Minnesota Vikings backfield. There's going to be a lot of carries for Tai Chandler, and based on how this offensive line looks, this is going to be a situation you want to take advantage of because Minnesota, while they do not have a great quarterback situation right now, which is not great, they do have a good offensive-minded head coach and a good offensive line. So you need to take advantage of having a potential starter at running back. Now, Chuba Hubbard definitely should not be on any waivers. 58.8% rostered. If he's on your waiver wire, make sure to pick him up. He's starting literally immediately. He will be starting next Sunday for the Carolina Panthers against the New Orleans Saints. Chuba Hubbard should not be on any waiver wires right now. It's a guy that, at the very least, just count on for starter upside, and in my opinion, has a lot of potential to be a great league-winning type of guy that I'm not going to get into completely because I'll take up like 10 minutes talking about him. But if you want to see my full opinions on Chuba Hubbard, you'll watch the video that's on the screen right now after this one. And then Jared Goff. If you're having quarterback problems, this guy should not be on waiver wires. He's 54.9% roster right now on ESPN. It should be 100%. Jared Goff is a top 12 quarterback. So if you, again, drafted quarterback late, Jared Goff is the guy that you want to make sure you have on your team. Or even if you're dealing with a situation where you got Jaden Daniels as your quarterback one, or Caleb Williams as your quarterback one. Those rookie quarterbacks, they're inconsistent sometimes. You can't rely on them. Jared Goff is a great, stable quarterback who will get you a consistent 20 to 25 points per game. Now, these next group of guys right here, this is how we ended here, because I'm not saying they're must-add guys. They're guys that you need to keep your eye on, though. Make sure to keep your eye on them throughout the rest of the week and for the next several weeks of fantasy football. Marvin Mims Jr., Demario Douglas, Jalen McMillan, Michael Wilson, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Luke Musgrave. With all these guys right here, I believe they have upside to be legitimate starters in fantasy football. I do not think that they will start right away and break out in week one, which is why you do not need to add them now. But with Marvin Mims Jr. in particular, he's a guy that with Tim Patrick gone in Denver now, he's a starter. He's a starter. Sean Payton loves him. He was Sean Payton's first draft pick that he traded up to get in 2023, so he's going to be used. Demario Douglas, if Jalen Polka's in the wide receiver one, it's Demario Douglas. This is a guy who led the team in targets and receptions and receiving yards last year, and I get it. Jalen Polk's the exciting rookie. Demario Douglas very well could be the wide receiver one on this offense. Jalen McMillan, Very, very talked about in Tampa Bay this offseason. They love him over there. Coaches, players, you name it, they all love him. Looks great in preseason action. I think is a guy who absolutely could overtake Chris Godwin as the number 2 target. Michael Wilson, totally overlooked by Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. over in Arizona. He's totally overlooked. Second-year wide receiver, did okay with the Arizona Cardinals last year, but now has a full season with Kyler Murray. This guy is one to watch for sure. Tyrone Tracy Jr., going to be one to watch, and honestly, if he wasn't injured right now, I would say he is a must-add. But since he is injured right now and he is a rookie, late-round rookie, I can't say he's a must-add right now because I don't think he'll be immediately valuable. He's a guy, though, that is the running back 2 on the Giants, and Devin Singletary is not exactly... I'm not exactly big on him. I think there's a chance he takes over that work, and I think he will take over the reception work at some point in the next few weeks, so he's going to be one to keep an eye on. And tight end Luke Musgrave, high upside offense with Green Bay, might split snaps with Tucker Kraft, but at the end of the day, if he is the tight end 1, this is a guy who have a lot of upside on the Green Bay Packers offense. And in fantasy football, you want to make sure that you keep an eye on the waiver wire tight ends in particular, because those guys get snatched up really fast, and by Week 8, Week 9, during the NFL season, there's not going to be any tight end upside available on the waiver wire. So let me know what your roster looks like right now in fantasy football. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for the whole 2024 season, click on this video right here.